Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of the MSR Workshop. So today I'm going to bring you all along on an experiment that I'm going to try. And what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be taking this logo and I'm going to be gluing it onto a piece of wood. I'm going to be cutting this outline out and I'm going to be using that as a mold to do an epoxy pour. We're going to do a couple other cool things, and one thing we're going to do is we're going to inset some lights into it. It should look really cool, so stick around and I'll show you what we're going to do. I've grabbed a piece of wood, and this happened to be a scrap piece of wood that was laying around, but it is some beech. Now, beech is a nice wood, so if you want to grab some cheaper wood, probably a better idea, but this just happened to be the size and the thickness that I was looking for. And I am going to secure this down to my wood as best as I can, and then I'm going to cut out all the black lines. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this wood really well with this Weldwood multi-purpose spray adhesive. I really like this stuff. Now I want to really liberally coat this because I don't really want to take it off. So it's okay to get a good thick coat. And you want to make sure when you spray this stuff that you have somewhere to catch the overspray, because it is a real pain to clean up. And when you spray it on, you want to give it just a few seconds to tack up, and then go ahead and put your stuff down. If you wait too long and the stuff dries, then it doesn't stick really well, so you may want to spray some more on it. So once this is good and attached, what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these two sections here before I cut this out, because I'm going to actually do this in two pieces. This will be a separate piece, and this will be a separate piece. So I'm going to come here on the bandsaw and kind of cut this bottom part out. All right, so let's go ahead and get this cut out. And you can see back here, this is my Carter stabilizer that I used in my bandsaw box video. If you want to see where to get this, just look in the link below. So our next part is I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole in both of our pieces here, and then we're going to go over to the scroll saw and cut this out. Now that we've got our shapes cut out, I'm going to try something. Hopefully this will work. And so what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a silicone and a paintbrush, and I'm going to paint all the insides of the mold that I'm going to use with silicone. Once that dries, then hopefully once I do my epoxy pour in there and spray it first with a mold release, I'll be able to get this out without having to cut the wood form out. So this could work. This could be a complete disaster. So let's hope and cross our fingers. So now that we've got this all siliconed up and all the edges that the epoxy will be touching, we're going to go ahead and let this dry, and we'll come back and I'll show you what we'll do next. Now that we've got our silicone dried in our molds, what we're going to do is we're going to lay a layer of tape down on our wood, and then we're going to use some hot glue to set our forms down. So let's get that done and I'll be right back. So I've got these all glued down, and one thing I really wanted to make sure I paid attention to is making sure the wires don't touch the sides of my mold, because when I pull this out, I don't want any wires right at the edges where I have to sand. Also, if a bulb is close to the edge, it's kind of going to give a little bit of a weird bright spot, and I don't think it would look very good. So I just used a little bit of a hot glue to tack them down on the inside because we're going to frost it. We really don't need this to be clear once again. And I think this should look pretty good. So now let's get our epoxy mixed up, and be sure and we'll hit this with a mold release so we can get this out. So now we are ready to pour. So the epoxy that I'm going to use is Alumilite, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio. And we are going to do this by weight and not so much volume, because it'll come out the same mixture. So let's get this mixed up and cross our fingers, and we're going to do our pour. So that was definitely an interesting process. While I was hoping not to break the mold, I did. Now the silicone ID on the inside of the mold actually worked quite beautifully, but because I had so many little tight turns and because it did leak out underneath the mold, it didn't want to release as nicely as I wanted to. Now once I broke the sides of the mold, actually there were some large chunks that actually just pushed straight away. So if you're wanting to get something out of a mold and you make it out of wood, definitely try using the silicone and then spraying it with that mold release, because it did really work. And I would expect that, you know, some rounder shapes or some not as complex shapes as this would probably release easier, and you might be able to save them. Now if you don't, you're still not going to have a problem just lightly breaking your mold, and then most stuff is going to push right out. Our next process is we are going to go ahead and frost this, get rid of all the little extra bits on top. And we're going to start on the belt sander, see how that works. If it doesn't, then we'll move on to a palm sander or some just hand sandpaper. Well, everybody, that's it for this build video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, it didn't turn out exactly as I would have hoped, but I did learn a lot, and it was a fun experiment to do. Possibly next time I might try something with a little bit of tint in it so it's not completely translucent. Even though I frosted, I still could see a little bit of the wire inside. And maybe find a better way to illuminate the thing where I didn't get the individual glowing spots, because that's what I want to avoid. And wrapping it did help a lot, but at the end, I still could see the individual things. Now, some people may have liked that look. That's not the intended look that I was going for. I was just kind of going for a subtle glow, but it still was fun. Now, one thing I didn't show on camera was the back. I glued the little battery case on and then hot glued it down, and then I had 4 attachment points here with Velcro, so you could stick it here. And then you have the little switch right at the bottom so you could turn it on and off. If you have any suggestions or just like the video, be sure and hit that thumbs up button and that like and subscribe button. Thanks, guys.